have every person sing ever. Because he's at OSU, his wife is the choir director. Yes.
Does anybody know whose stuff is on the front row here?
Yeah.
Can we just, if you don't mind, can you just put it on the back as part of the chance of choir? You can still light it, it'll be right where it's supposed to be.
I'm sorry.
The last few semesters, she was directing the chorus, and she was having like harder time. She stepped down every semester.
So was she still?
No.
Okay, bye.
She may have it.
Thanks for not knowing.
I'm sorry, I don't. No, I had time until it dropped out.
Chorus members, if you can take begin. Prelude's gonna start.
Good afternoon. I'm Lou Seipel, the senior pastor of Worthington United Methodist Church, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the celebration of life for our dear Anne Rigney. Also want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here. Also to thank Diane Frazier. Anne was at a concert here not too long ago, maybe last summer, and she heard Diane play. And she asked if she would play at her memorial. So thank you, Diane. And thank you to Jared and to all of the musicians who are here today to make it such a special occasion. Would you do us a great kindness and make sure that your phones are on silence? Thank you so much.
and played the flute, and of course she loved flute music. Now we invite the family to say some words, starting with her sister-in-law, Monica.
Anne was born in 1940 to a world embroiled in World War II. Some of her earliest memories were leaning out the window and talking to the soldiers waiting to deploy. "I have a baby sister," she announced in her Boston accent. "Do you have a baby sister?" Other days, she would untie her shoelaces on purpose and say, "My shoe's untied." She was delighted when a soldier bent down to tie it for her. Then she'd move on to the next soldier and she'd untie it again. Family life was centered in Boston, Canada, and in England. Her father, a geology professor at MIT, was from Ottawa and Ontario, and Anne spent many summers in Canada at Danford Lake in a little cottage in Quebec with an ice house and an outhouse. For several sweet weeks, life was defined by swimming, rowboat rides, berry-picking expeditions, and fetching milk and bread from neighboring farmhouses. Her mother's family was Irish and English. Because of the war, they were separated and couldn't visit for several years. When at last it was safe to cross the ocean again, Anne and her siblings sailed across the Atlantic on the Queen Mary. Anne was hopelessly seasick for the 10-day journey. England was deeply part of the fabric of her life. Her grandmother, her aunts, lived at Henwick Old Farm in Berkshire in a strongly matriarchal family. Anne and her siblings made several extended trips to England. Their mother pulled them out of school in April and did not return them until October. Anne was the eldest of 4 Fairbairn children. There was Anne, Patrick, Elspeth, and Neil. She didn't always like being the eldest. At age 10, she crawled on her hands and her knees and said she was the baby. Her mother decided she needed more one-on-one attention, so Anne was sent off to England to live with her aunts and her grandmother. Anne attended British school as a 10-year-old and witnessed firsthand the post-war rationing of cheese and meat, butter and sugar. As a child, the lack of sugar mattered most. When the family rejoined Anne in the summer, one tiny little Mars bar had to be split 6 ways. In high school, Anne played the flute, and each child in the Fairbairn family chose an instrument, and her father would lead the family in playing chamber music in the basement. An ensemble of flute, violin, clarinet, bassoon, and cello, and piano. As for her mother, she always said, "Someone has to be the audience." During her undergraduate years, Anne lived at home and attended Simmons College. She moved to New York City for graduate school, earning a master's degree in social work from Columbia University. Also importantly, she roomed with Mary Owens and Joan Rigney. Young David Rigney came to New York to visit his sister. The next time he visited, he came to see Anne. Their first date was to see the movie Tom Jones. They stood in the rain in the ticket line and chatted happily, not minding getting wet a bit. Dave always said that one of the first things that attracted him to Anne was her voice. They married in 1965 in Christchurch, a historic Cambridge, Massachusetts church, which has a revolutionary bullet hole in the door. After a postdoc for Dave in Urbana, Illinois, they moved to Columbus with baby Mark in 1967 and settled into life on Carruthers Drive. 2 years later, their daughter Heather was born. So began a life of community in Columbus, filled with music, children, nature, caring, volunteering, and an enormous network of friends. Anne adored children. She found her life's calling as a preschool teacher at the exceptional play-based preschool for young children in Clintonville. This was life-changing. She liked the littlest ones best and founded the school's 2-year-old program. One of her life thrills was visiting Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and meeting Daniel Striped Tiger and Mr. Rogers. Anne's life also had an international flavor. She and Dave lived in Cambridge, England, and Sendai, Japan, on 2 sabbaticals, and traveled to conferences together. Dave brought home OSU graduate students from China, Taiwan, India, Germany, and Japan. She welcomed them all. From young students missing their mothers in India, to faculty wives feeling lost without a friend in Columbus. Her Thanksgiving table had chopsticks as well as turkey. And everyone who liked to sing was invited to the Rigney family Christmas Carol party, a tradition of more than 50 years. Sometimes up to 75 people crammed into the house, including Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, and Buddhist friends. It is no surprise that condolences are arriving from Sri Lanka to the Netherlands, from Japan to Belarus. Anne connected people. She was lucky to be surrounded by a group of remarkably caring neighbors on Carruthers Drive. She also formed new friendships with the wonderful aides who came to her house to care for her towards the end of her life. Anne always wanted a support group to help navigate her disability, and she got that and more from the caring hearts in the ALS community. Anne loved Gilbert and Sullivan, BBC British comedies, and tap water with no ice. She loved books, sharing books, and all her book clubs. She loved the Hocking Hills. She loved gardening, weeding, and picking berries. Trips with Dave and trips to see the grandchildren. She wrote letters to family, endless letters, and remembered everybody's birthday. Without Anne, the post office may see a significant drop in its male volume. We are grateful for her lifetime of love. Sister Anne loved us unconditionally. She was a bright, bright light in our world and in the lives of so many children.
Now we will hear one of Anne's favorite pieces of music, the Agnus Dei from Fauré's Requiem, sung by this wonderful collection of singers who gathered today in her honor. Anne did not join the Methodist Church because she was a good Methodist. She came for the music and the chance to sing in the church choir with conductor Maurice Casey. She'd grown up with the Church of England and the Episcopalian Church in Boston, but in Ohio, once she entered the doors of this Worthington United Methodist Church, she never left. In fact, during her last day in the hospital, she wrote "Church, 10 a.m." on the whiteboard in her lap, aware that the service was beginning. Anne sang in the chancel choir for 54 years, stopping only when ALS took her singing voice. She was active in church circles and ministries. She volunteered at the Worthington Resource Pantry, and in later years took the Coda bus in her wheelchair to continue sorting applesauce and fruit cups for families. Anne was always busy with her hands, making sandwiches every week for people experiencing homelessness, and busy with plarn, that is, cutting cast-off plastic bags into strips to weave into sleeping mats for unhoused people. When Anne saw there was a need, she filled it. She co-founded the church's caring committee, which she led for 20 years. This caring committee arranged rides for people to get to doctor's appointments and brought meals to families experiencing difficulties. Anne was on the phone year after year, making arrangements so everyone would be cared for and no one forgotten. These words by John Wesley sum up how Anne lived her life. Do all the good you can, in all the ways you can, to all the people you can, in every place you can, at all times you can, as long as you ever can. We are grateful and remember Anne's light in our church community. We invite Deb to come forward to share some remarks from the School for Young Children.
Anne taught at the School for Young Children, known as SYC, for 40 years. Excuse me. She volunteered for 6 additional years after she retired, and she was recognized as the Early Childhood Educator of the Year with a statewide Outstanding Teacher Award. She loved and played with many hundreds, if not thousands, of children, and truly saw each child for who they were. She listened carefully, paid attention to what each kid did and felt. She found joy in hearing about and visiting with her former students. During her time at SYC, Anne mentored many teachers, me included, and parents, providing honest, if sometimes blunt, feedback. You knew where you stood with Anne, and you knew she loved you. Anne brought her full self to her work with children, sharing her travels and her love of nature with the classes. She worked with 2- and 3-year-olds for decades, including several years as a teaching trio with co-teachers Gudrun and Julie. SYC provided an unbreakable tribe of strong women and lifelong friends for her. Here's some words from the SYC families. She graciously scattered her love onto the hearts of children and their parents. She was one of those people, she was clearly one of those people who are here on this earth with such immense kindness and charity. Oh, how lucky my boy was to have her as a teacher. He's almost 17 now and still talks about SYC. Excuse me. During a home visit, Anne asked my toddler what he'd like to do, and he told her, wrestle. Without hesitating, she got down on the floor and played with him. Both our girls were lucky to have Anne at SYC. At 39 and 14, they still remember learning about Japan from Anne's guests and being sad about baby birds. My children were so lucky to be in Anne's class, but I was really the lucky one. She taught me how to be a better parent with her wise words of wisdom. Her legacy is timeless and will live on. One additional story. There was a 3-year-old who was crying and crying because she couldn't get her snow pants on. Anne didn't do it for her. She sat beside the child and let her cry, saying, "It's hard, but you can do it." "Oh, I know it's frustrating, but you can do this." Finally, the girl slipped both her legs into the snow pants, pulled up the straps, jumped up, and danced around. Her face glowed with surprise and confidence. "I did it, I did it!" Anne knew when to give help. And when help wasn't needed, simply being there, offering moral support and encouragement. The child experienced the joy of learning. Anne was well known for bringing dead birds to SYC, so that the children's first experience with death would be with a wild animal rather than a beloved pet or grandparent. She taught us that it's okay to be sad, and we are. We miss you, Anne.
If you are one of Anne's former students, would you please come forward and place a flower in this vase? Please come forward to place a flower if you are a teacher or past teacher at the School for Young Children. And please come forward to place a flower if you are an SYC family or you've been touched by Anne's work with young children. And now listen to one of Anne's favorite choral pieces from the Brahms Requiem, How Lovely Is Thy Dwelling Place. We'll now hear some memories of Anne sent in both locally and from around the world.
The memories go back a long way. More than 70 years to Hennick Old Farm in the early 1950s. And then, of course, there were the Christmas letters, which would arrive well before I'd even thought about starting to write mine.
I remember her voice in particular. I always thought it was distinct and had an impressive range in both singing and expression.
The way she pronounced words and always said, garage.
How she'd really slowly get into the water at Stevens Lake, and the "oh" sound she'd make if the water was cold.
Granny always loved going to the Columbus Zoo, and she told me stories about the gorillas, bonobos, and other primates. Every time I visited Columbus, I couldn't wait to go back to the zoo with Granny.
She made funny noises playing ping pong and was very good at hugging.
Walking around Antrim together.
She had an aura about her.
She was kind and loving and always made me feel at home. For someone who left India for a totally new country and missed family, this was so precious.
What she told me when my mother died. Mothers are the ones who love you without reservation or judgment, even knowing exactly who you are.
When I met her, she asked about my family. I pulled out my wallet. Aunt spent some time looking at pictures of my parents and girlfriend in China. I said to her, "These are the most important people in my life." She said, "Exactly." Anne effortlessly makes people around her feel welcome and comfortable.
When my first child, Theodore, was having toddler tantrums, I called up Auntie Anne for some advice. In her matter-of-fact way, she said, "Have you tried giving him a choice between two acceptable options?" Aha, good idea. Auntie Anne had a knack for making complicated situations seem downright straightforward. She was sharp without any sharp edges. Her focus was always on the people around her, on the people she loved, and especially on the children.
Anne was such a kind, gentle soul. She would do anything to help someone in need. She made each person feel they were special, just like Mr. Rogers.
And from a dear friend in Japan, what a beautiful life with a lot of love. I don't want to say goodbye to my dear An-san. An was too special for me, and she was always kind and brave, even after she got such a disease. I have received her love enough to live the rest of my life. Still, my tears come down, and I don't want to live in this world without her.
She would have lived more and loved you all more if she could. Her body couldn't keep up with her spirit, yet she has filled us up with enough love to live the rest of our lives. Whether you knew her for a few minutes, for a short time this summer, or for your entire life, she cherished you.
If she were here, I know what she would say to each of us. Thank you, dear. I love you. And check the calendar to see whose birthday is coming up.
Anne loved to walk and hike and to explore the natural world. From walks around Antrim to the sandstone cliffs and caves of the Hocking Hills to trekking in Alaska, Iceland, Peru, China, India, and Botswana. We'll now sing the hymn For the Beauty of the Earth in honor of Anne's love of nature. That is found on page 92 of your hymnal or in the bulletin that you are provided. Would you please rise in body or in spirit? Be seated. We invite Mark to come forward to share some remarks.
I stand here today to answer the unspoken but ever-present question of who will speak for me. In matters of the law, we have public defenders. In matters of government, we have elected representatives. And when life ends, we have friends and we have family. The last time I spoke in this space about my mother, it was in the late 1970s. I believe I was 10 or perhaps 11 years old, and the church was holding a Mother's Day service. And I was one of several young people, the youngest, if I recall, who had been tapped to speak about their mothers, to offer a tribute. I'm not sure about the other mothers to be honored that day, but mine was sitting right over there in the choir. When the time came, I rose from my pew and came up here, clutching a piece of paper. And I looked out at all the people sitting where you're sitting, and I froze. I couldn't bring myself to speak or to look at my notes. In fact, I crumpled those notes and stuffed them in my pocket. But I had to say something, so I did. I told the members of this church that my mother was special because she listened to me. Unrehearsed, unexpected, that came from the heart, and it was and is absolutely true. I was not the only person she listened to. She had a talent for that, for hearing others and offering comfort, support, occasionally advice. And she kept right on doing all those things, thinking of others, prioritizing their needs, right up until the end. One of the last things she said to me the night before she died was to ask who was going to eat all the tortillas. I assured her that I'd give them a good home. So today I speak for my mother, but also for my family, and my father in particular. In 1993, he wrote a letter to his in-laws, my mother's parents, and this is what he wrote. "This is a late thank you letter. I am thanking you for Anne. You produced a wonderful daughter. We can leave others to debate whether she is the result of good genes, good upbringing, or some special magic. In any case, there are many beneficiaries all over the globe. I refer here to everyone who has met her and especially those who know her well. Since I spend more time with her than does anyone else, though not nearly enough time, I am the major beneficiary. I feel very lucky. You already know that Anne is kind and considerate, but she is a lot more than a very nice person. I'm sure you have noticed over the years as she has continued to add knowledge, expertise, self-confidence, and wisdom. I love her, admire her, and respect her. She and I are very different, but we have a lot in common. I am delighted to share as much as possible with her. 31 years later, following my mother's death, my father revised a short poem he'd written especially for my mother. The poem is called Absence, and in its new incarnation, it reads, "Nature still impresses, music still is beautiful. I am fortunate and grateful, but part of me is missing. I want to share with her. She was love personified." If we imagine for a moment that my mother could appear at her own funeral, like Tom Sawyer, I am confident that among other things, she would tell you to read all the books, listen to all the music, and travel to every possible destination. She would remind us to take children and young people seriously and to value what they bring to the world as they grow into adulthood. She would wish that you be surrounded always by family and friends, that you carry hope and love in your heart, and that you accept your feelings and emotions, both here today in this service and after as you return to the wider world. She would hope, in short, that when this service ends, you might go in peace. I can still see her right over there. She was gifting us with her heart and listening. Thank you.
Let us rise in body or in spirit for our second hymn, verses 1 and 2. Anne loved listening to the bassoon all her life. Her brother Neil will now play a bassoon piece, followed by a moment of silence in Anne's memory. Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage, hold fast that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the afflicted, show love to everyone. May Anne's life of love be a blessing to you and remain with you always. You are invited to a reception held at Anne's Preschool, the school for young children. It's 5 minutes down High Street. There you may greet the family, tour the preschool, and enjoy some refreshments. Maps are available at the door as you leave. In this spirit, and in honor of Anne's great love for children, the music you'll hear as you exit is the Teddy Bears Picnic. Go in peace in the beloved memory of Anne.
guess it. I don't want to hear it. It's since 1948. Boo-hoo, 2009. How many championships has he won?